we knew that we needed to stay away from that place. We kind of already knew that something bad was going to happen. I said, I wanted to tell him, Lord, just take me quick. And all I remember was just seeing white after that. I just remember looking at my vehicle commander and asking him, how was our platoon sergeant? Because they were right behind us. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to say anything. I already knew that it had happened. Now I feel like we're in combat every day. Combat, I think, is more psychological and emotional now.
Have you done things to continue that process of growth since that time, or was it sort of a one and done thing for you?
No, I was completely fine. My PTSD was cured after that.
That's great. That's great to hear.
It is a constant job.
The views and opinions in this podcast do not represent the Department of Defense, Department of the Navy, or United States Marine Corps.
After their deployment in 2008, some called them the Forgotten Battalion. But the Marines and sailors of the United States Marine Corps' 2nd Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment reject the way the Forgotten Battalion moniker encourages that narrative of broken veterans. Instead, these warriors simply want to be remembered for the mission they accomplished and for the honor with which they have served their country and their Corps. The majority of 2-7 veterans continue to reflect on their experiences while living their lives and pressing forward. These are their personal stories of resilience, with insight to healthy coping and living with hope. Welcome to the Warriors Roundtable. Today we talk to former enlisted Marine, Noel Guerrero.
Noel, welcome to Warriors Roundtable.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to hear more about your story of your service in Afghanistan. So, Noel, would you tell us a little bit about what you did and where you were serving and with whom you were serving when you were in Afghanistan in 2008?
So in Afghanistan in 2008, I was with the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, and I was part of the Combat Trains Alpha platoon, which was a platoon that went all over the Helmand Province at the time. Essentially, I started off with a Victor company, as they called it. I was with Fox Company, and essentially we were just a basic infantry company. But what happened towards the deployment is they picked out a few infantry guys from each company to be the machine gunners or a Mortar 2 platoon that would be going all over the place, supplying different FOBs. And my number got called, and I became a full-time machine gunner on a turret during my Afghanistan deployment. So they had infantry guys come out from Gulf, Fox Company, and Echo Company, I think, to be the machine gunners for that Mortar 2 platoon, which was a combat trains platoon.
Can you talk a little bit about what kind of missions you guys would run while you were there in country?
Yeah, so essentially it's quite comical because when I was going to go to Afghanistan with 2-7 as an infantry guy, the one thing that you think about in your life is this is the only thing that gives you any kind of self-worth is you need that combat action ribbon. You need that combat action ribbon on your chest, and that's what's going to tell you that you're a real infantry guy. So I was very worried when I went on the combat trains platoon because I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to be in any firefights. Well, it was quite the contrary because it turns out that the Taliban just really, really loves to go after those convoys because we had a lot of things that they wanted. And our job was to protect the convoys. And we went all over Afghanistan supplying the different FOBs with, things like batteries and food and just, essentials and people as well. We would, take people back and forth from the FOBs.
You've probably had more experiences than a lot of folks have because you guys were running missions just about every day, correct?
Yeah. We were out a lot, covered a lot of miles.
Is there any particular milestone event or operation that you all did when you were in Afghanistan in 2008?
Yeah. I think that one of the particular milestones would be, by far, it's got to be my first firefight. uh, and it's a milestone because all I wanted to do was get that combat action ribbon as a typical grunt, and I got the 0311 right here in my arm, and just inside out, just an infantry guy. And that first firefight, I just remember so much happening, and all I remember was having the biggest smile in my face when it was happening, because I finally got to be in combat. And I remember everything happened like you would think about it in a video game, like it happened with the explosion and then the mortars and then the small arms fire. And then at the very, very end of it, all I remember was looking at my platoon sergeant, not my platoon sergeant, the vehicle commander, and saying, "Hey, Sergeant, does that qualify as me having my combat action ribbon?" And I'll never forget. I looked down from the turret, and all I see is this thumbs up, and I said, "Yes, I'm a real grunt now." Yeah. That's probably the first milestone.
Right. You punched your card that day, huh?
Yeah.
Now, in retrospect, what is combat like now for you when you think back to those experiences? I imagine very different.
Yeah. Now, I feel like we're in combat every day. I think you're in combat with your emotions. You're in combat with the social aspects of your life, whether it's at work, whether it's with new friends, at church, whatever you're into. I think we're constantly in combat with what's happening in life. So combat, I think, is more psychological and emotional now than physical. When I was in 27.
Going back to your experience in 2008 a little bit, is there any event or maybe multiple events that you find yourself going back to?
Yeah. There are multiple events that I find myself going back to. But the event that will never leave my mind is probably when I lost my platoon sergeant on September 19, 2008. He died when he hit a IED in the Helmand Province of Afghanistan. That was actually the first vehicle that was hit by an IED.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what that experience was like for you from your perspective?
Yeah, that day was that day we expected something to happen. We were going into this route that was notorious for having previous armies and a lot of different types of people that went through there that got hit by IEDs or ambushed. It was called Route 515, and we knew that we needed to stay away from that place. But we got a mission to go through it one day and to clear it, and we kind of already knew that something bad was going to happen. So when you go through a mission like that, you just kind of, you prepare yourself. And I think that day what happened is I kind of felt something in my heart, and I decided to just pray. But as soon as I said, I felt something in my heart. I know it. I knew it. And I kind of just told God at that very moment, and I said, I wanted to tell him, Lord, just take me quick. Mm-hmm. But the only word that came out of my mouth was Lord. And all I remember was just seeing white after that. And then it all happened very, very quickly. I ended up crawling out of the vehicle, and I think there was a little bit of small arms fire when I got out. There were some mortars right before it happened. It wasn't anything too crazy, but I just remember looking at my vehicle commander and asking him how was I was our platoon sergeant because they were right behind us. And I said, how is bus, which is the code name for the truck, but is also the code name for the platoon sergeant.
Okay.
And I'll never forget, he just looked back at me and he gave me this, he just said, like, he didn't say anything. He didn't have to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
I already knew that it had happened. And, you know, there's a certain time where combat is, you know, infantry and gung-ho and let's do this. But you always hear that phrase until someone gets hurt. Yeah. And that was the day when someone got hurt. And that's one of the events that I will consistently go back to, I'm pretty sure, for the rest of my life.
It sounds like a very, very different experience for you than that first experience that you talked about, where it was sort of fresh, new, exciting, even fun. And there is something that's very exhilarating and I'll say even enjoyable for Marines to come together, to act as a fire team or as a unit, and to execute their mission and to do it well. There's really nothing like it, you know, as far as the kind of camaraderie and togetherness that you feel. And there's nothing wrong with that. At the same time, there's some real brutal aspects of combat. When you think back to that, was that an experience that you had to process through? Did you have a difficult time moving on from that? And if so, how did you process through it?
You have very, very little time to process, because the only thing that you want to do is you want to get back out there.
Yeah.
So I fought and scratched my way back into the next convoy, essentially. That night, I was medevaced over to one of the other FOBs, but as soon as I was able to, I had to get back out there, because you're doing it for someone now. You're doing it for your platoon sergeant at this point. So you don't process it, I think. You go right back out there.
Yeah. When did you realize that those experiences, probably not just that experience, but that those experiences were starting to have an impact on you, because you had to sort of compartmentalize and keep it kind of stored away for a while? When did you realize that, no, this is starting to become a little unbearable?
Well, you don't realize it when you're in the, I think, during the deployment, or sometimes even after the deployment, because you're still in the deep in with the Marines. You still have all the camaraderie, and everybody's kind of going through the numbers. I think the point for myself when I really realized it was after I left 2-7. I was in the Wounded Warrior Battalion, and I had a recovery coordinator, which is kind of a case manager, to tell you where you need to go to your appointments. And he just kept telling me that, you know, he could see it in my eyes that I was just tired, and he could hear it in my voice. And there's just these little nuances that I guess my body was expressing. And I just didn't want to do anything. I was like, no, I'm fine. Just tell me where I need to go to my appointment, and, you know, I'll get there. And, you know, that's that. But I wasn't fine. I was very distracted. all the time. I would go on these space patrol missions where I would just kind of like hover over my body, for lack of better terms, and I wasn't there anymore. I think I was just disassociated with myself, and it got to the point where little things would just happen. Where when I wanted to park, I would run over the curb. I wanted to get in the garage, I would scratch my mirror getting in the garage. It's just I was no longer paying attention to the smallest things like driving or just walking. I would trip. And then one day I got into a little bumper to bumper, and it wasn't anything big. It was just a little bumper to bumper, but I realized that I was just so distracted by my emotions and my feelings and everything that was going on that I was no longer completely there when I was driving. And because of that, I hit the car in front of me. And that's when I finally decided to tell my recovery coordinator, look, I think I need help. And he connected me with everything that I needed. And from there on, it's when I really actually understood. When I told myself Right? This is what's going on, and you got to deal with it. You got to start dealing with it.
Was that difficult for you to reach out, Noel?
No. You see, because I didn't reach out, someone was there constantly telling me that you should go, you should go. I guess it was, I guess it was difficult to, after realizing that I needed to do something, go and talk to someone. It was extremely difficult. The act of actually going to talk to someone was very difficult, because having to talk about that with someone that I don't know, someone that I don't trust, it just felt cheap. It felt cheap. Like I don't know this person, and I have to tell this person something that he doesn't need to know. He wasn't there, and I felt like I felt like I have to feed him this ham sandwich. I have to tell him what's going on and go through the numbers, because you have this thing in your head of what seeing a psychologist is, the leather couch and the laying on it, and then someone with a little clipboard. Yeah, so in that sense, it was hard.
What helped you kind of get over that?
Well, once I did let out what I needed to say, it was the psychiatrist had worked with a previous infantry battalion that had just came back from Afghanistan, and he had his plaque on the wall and everything, and he kind of had credibility in that sense. Mm-hmm. And after the first couple of times of me expressing what I was feeling, I feel like I felt good. I don't know how to explain it. I just felt not better, but it felt nice to let go of this secret that I was holding so hard to.
It sounds like part of what was holding you back was just sort of, you may not have called it a fear, but it was a concern or a fear of having maybe your experience invalidated by having to share it with somebody that just didn't understand. And it sounds like once you actually had that conversation with him, you sort of, just by choosing to have the conversation, you confronted your fear with the truth. And the truth was, he actually seemed to be a good listener, and probably understood and validated your experience in a way that gave you a sense of relief that this was a safe and a good place. And I'm glad you're able to find somebody like that. Have you done things to continue that process of growth since that time, or was it sort of a one and done thing for you?
No, I was completely fine. My PTSD was cured after that.
That's great. That's great to hear.
It is a constant job. It's 24 hours a day of work. You're not necessarily maybe going to a psychologist, mm-hmm. but whenever you deal with things like what I have dealt with in combat, along with thousands of other guys that went to Afghanistan, you got to constantly work at it. Yeah. And if I'm not working at it, I feel it. I can tell, So one of the things that I do is I make sure that no matter what I do, I have time to run in the trails. And when I run in the trails, that's like my time, because during the day and wherever else I am, like my brain is just going 110 miles an hour, and I don't necessarily process everything that fast. But when I'm running, there's just this calmness, and I'm just out with nature, and I try to be secluded. And I just run in trails and see a deer if I need to, and go up a mountain, and that's how I do it. But I have to do it all the time. Like if I miss my runs, which is basically my way of saying my time with myself and working with myself and praying with God, I can see what happens when I don't. I mean, there's little things like sitting in a room when it's quiet, and all of a sudden, I'm afraid to be with my own emotions. I get anger bursts, or I'm a lot more stressed. So it's constant work. it happened in 2008, and we're in 2019 now. I cannot tell you that I have slowed down on working on that. I continuously work on that.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work. It is.
Well, how would you say that you have become a different person since experiencing combat with the Marine Corps in Afghanistan in particular?
I think combat with the Marine Corps prepares you so much for anything afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you can always go back to your struggles in combat and tell yourself when you're in a hard place in the civilian world that you've been through worse. And I know it sounds so cliche and it's so simplistic, I guess. But in reality, we're gonna trip over so many times, and then we're gonna be tested. But we've already been tested to the max.
Yeah.
Physically, emotionally, we've already done it and we passed it. So combat has prepared me for everything outside of the Marine Corps because I know that I've been through worse.
I hear you saying a couple of things at least there. And one is that in some ways, as much as you take some of the trauma from combat with you, it's also made you a better person. And a lot of times we don't think of it that way, but it's actually in some ways made you better. The other thing I hear you saying is that this is a constant process, but at the same time, it doesn't have to beat you down. You just have to intentionally do things to deal with it, to grow through it. And what else have you talked a little bit about running. What else have you done to sort of address some of the trauma, the stress that you carry with you?
I pray a lot. I do pray a lot. I did lose my faith in Afghanistan. I doubted God a lot, and it took me a little while to get back into the church when I came back. But now I do pray a lot. That's what I do have, and when I'm running, when I'm running every day, that's my time to be alone with myself, and then sometimes pray, because that's the other thing that I do. And then the other main thing that I do is I have devoted my life and everything that I do to combat veterans. I do a lot of work in that community because I care so much. I care so much about the combat veteran community just because I know what they've been through, and I just want to be proactive in that community and help out as much as I can. Speaking
of which, would you talk to us a little bit about what you do through the Semper Fi Fund and how Marines who may feel disconnected or might want to reach out for help could find that through the Semper Fi Fund?
Yeah. The Semper Fi Fund did a great thing in 2016 where the unit that I was with, the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, had a very high suicide ratio. And Semper Fi Fund wanted to do a reunion for 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. So they reached out to me and wanted to know if I could help coordinate something like that. And we did a 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines battalion reunion, and it was like a dream come true for a lot of people. Just to be back with all your brothers and cabins and sharing stories, and all of a sudden it's almost like you're back in 2008. So after the Semper Fi Fund did that, I think that it was incredibly successful because a lot of 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines veterans reconnected and stayed connected, and that's the biggest thing, that they stayed connected. So I do a lot of work with the Semper Fi Fund when it comes to reaching out to those combat veterans like the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines members. So that's I do a lot of work with them, and there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of guys out there that they need the good word passed along. They need to know that some of the symptomologies that they're experiencing are not necessarily bad. You you're always walking around and you feel like you're flinching, well, congratulations. You have spidey sense. You have a natural spidey sense that you obtained from combat. So now your family's safer for it. You know, you stress a lot. Well, guess what? You stress a lot of the product that you give to the civilian world, the reports that you turn in, the work that you do for people, it shines because you stress so much that you make products that much better. So there's good things that come with the symptomologies of PTSD. There is, and I want to just pass on that not all of them are bad. If you could try to think of them as something good, like protecting your family, you almost sense something bad happening before it even happens. And those are some of the good things, you know, and you want to pass along some of that advice. And there's a lot of people out there that might be having a bad time, and they've hit rock bottom, and you want to try to get to those people. So I do a lot of that stuff with the 2nd Battalion 7 Marines through the Semper Fi Fund.
I really like what you had to say and the way that you framed that there's things that we can be thankful for that we take from those experiences. There's some challenges for sure that we need to continually address. There's some good things that have made us better people because of those experiences. The other thing I really like about what you said is that you basically are continuing, Noel, to write your own story. You know, a lot of people kind of get stuck in a point in time, whether that be a deployment or just, you know, that season of life where I was a sailor or a Marine or a soldier or whatever, and they kind of they lose themselves once they get out. And we have this wonderful network of relationships when we're in, and we get really tight because of those kind of experiences. And what you do through Semper Fi Fund and other things is you really provide a way for 2-7 veterans in particular, but this goes to anybody. You provide a means for folks to get reconnected, and that is so important. One of the things that I was just reading recently in the book Tribe, I don't know if you've ever read that by Sebastian Junger.
No.
Ross Shellhaas, former company commander for Foss Company, recommended it to me months ago, and I picked it up and read it. He talks about how, for as much as technology has advanced and made us sort of a better society in those ways, it's come at a significant cost, and that is the sort of the tearing of relationships, that we've become extremely individualistic. And as a result, when people go through trauma, and certainly combat trauma, and they come back and then they get out or they retire, life can be very difficult for them unless they have a means to sort of maintain those connections, that sense of connectedness to others that they feel a closest to. And you provide a key network to make that happen. So thank you for all that you're doing, Noel. Appreciate it very much. We'll certainly link the Semper Fi Fund to the show notes below. Is there a particular point of contact that you would want to give them, or web address, email address right now?
No, I mean, if anybody wants to go and see what the Semper Fi Fund can do, it's just www.semperfifund.org. That's very easy to access. So no, that's pretty much it. Okay.
Noel, what do you do with your time now? Now that you're out of the Marine Corps, you're obviously doing some Semper Fi Fund stuff, but you're very active in just continuing to live your life and do things to try to find joy in life. What do you do with your time?
My hobbies are 2-7 combat veterans. That is my hobby. I just love my family. God gave me thousands of brothers that understand me, and my hobby is to be able to be there for them, and running. Really, that's it. Yeah. And you know, my family is just my family is not my hobby, but they're my wife and my kid. They've just been a great support system for me, and I'd like to thank them for everything that they've done for me to this point, and God, for sure. I'd like to, I attribute a lot of where I am right now to the strength that the Lord has given me.
Well, that's a great testimony and a great point to end on. Thank you so much, Noel, for your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to not only share very personally your story, but also give a word of encouragement to those that are listening. And if opportunity presents itself, we'll have to do this again sometime in the future.
Of course. I would love it. I would love it.
All right. Thanks, Noel.
Not a problem. Thank you.